Greetings and welcome back to a discussion between Colttaine and me concerning today the gaming industry. And the question we are going to pose is, what is up with the gaming industry? And of course, specific games. But to address specific games, you have to talk about the trends and the direction things are going in. Now, I realize a lot of my sub base, you guys are gamers too. So this is a question and an issue that is relevant and near and dear to many of our hearts, even if it's not a quote-unquote hardcore issue. So those of you who like the hardcore issues, you might want to turn away right now. But to me, it's a hardcore issue because I really hate the direction the gaming industry is going. And Colttaine, we talked about this quite a bit privately, but there seems to be an overarching tendency these days for a certain model of game production. Publishing companies engage in this. You have something like EA, Ubisoft. These seem to be primary culprits, or at least culprits that just stand out to me and probably stand out to you as well, of just pumping stuff out and then people buying it, and it tends to be low quality. The way they're advertised prior to the actual publication or release is exaggerated. You know, it'll be worked over a million times graphically, looking far more impressive than the actual release, and people still buy it. And this model seems to be very successful, and now we see companies that had not engaged in that model slowly but surely gravitating towards that model as well. I would name Bethesda as one of them. I've talked quite a bit. Now it's your turn.
Well, I mean, it's not just that model. I think there's other things that have kind of creeped into the AAA titles as well. Probably the most pernicious being microtransactions. I mean, microtransactions were always a component of free-to-play mobile games. So, you know, they were very grindy games, and they were free. But yeah, you had to spend a lot of time. You had to do a lot of grinding, and you know, you could basically sidestep a lot of that grinding via a $5 in-game purchase. I mean, that's fine. That's a perfectly acceptable model on the mobile platform. You know, it's kind of like gaming light, video games light. But you know, when you've paid full price for a AAA title, like in Australia, when a game comes out here on Steam, it's usually around about the $75.
It's outrageous. You have my condolences. Well, you know, I bought the games.
Well,
it's actually cheaper for me to buy the games for you than for you to buy them yourself.
Yeah, I mean, once you factor in the exchange rate and stuff, a new release game on Steam in Australia is about $100.
Yeah.
And for that, you expect the complete game. You know, the fact that, you know, a lot of these AAA titles. I mean, you were saying, I haven't actually played it yet because I still haven't finished the last one, but you were saying that Mankind Divided.
So for those of you who don't, I wanted to talk about this regardless, but so thanks for bringing it up. Some of my subs are subbed to my gaming channel, which I really only do stuff infrequently on. But so Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, I don't need to talk about spoilers, but the way the story was structured and how it ended, it was clear that it was all done with the intention that there will be further content in the future that will be added on that will explain some of the potholes in the story, or rather the lack of explanation. Plot holes, my bad. That's a strange model. And on top of that, they had one-time microtransactions to essentially enhance your experience as a single player in a single player game. You know, buy Praxis kits to give yourself more augmentation, but that's only useful in one save. Even the pre-order bonuses and the DLC, it was really a kind of a nefarious approach. And it's clear, as I said, there are plot holes, there are things that are not addressed, and that the game leaves you off on a cliffhanger. And in that sense, it's not a complete game. Whether or not they release extensive DLC in the future to explain these things, or it's going to be done in a third title, which is my suspicion, that it'll be a final of a trilogy where Adam Jensen reappears and he has to deal with this stuff. that for old school gamers, such as myself, that's not a model that one can greatly appreciate. And the matter of fact is that Deus Ex Human Revolution, the game I got you that you still haven't even halfway finished, incidentally. I mean, say what you want about the game, but it was more or less a complete story. There were revelations. You started off at A, and I don't know if you ended at Z, but you certainly ended close, I don't know, 75% way through the alphabet, and things were explained. That's what that was behind that. Oh, this and that. And you didn't have that feeling in that particular game. So whilst I liked Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, I was hardly blown away by it. I don't think I'm going to leave this franchise with the feeling of nostalgia that I had for Deus Ex, Human Revolution, or even especially the old school, early 2000 Deus Ex games, which had excellent story. I mean, obviously dated now, but there was something just kind of strange about it. And seeing Eidos, or Square Enix, the publisher, do that, I don't know what's up. I mean, there have been claims that they were pressured to do this. I just don't know. But this is a trend that's been ongoing. Let's take another example. Bethesda.
Yeah.
Bethesda released all the DLC for Fallout 4, and originally the DLC cost a certain price, and then they decided, we're going to jack it up. I think it was 30 USD or 30 euros in Europe. They said, well, we're going to make it 50. Why? Well, ostensibly the claim was that the content's so extensive and it needs to correspond, with the depth and the expansiveness of this new content. But the reality was it wasn't that much more. They just wanted to make more money. And what happened? People still bought it. They bought the DLC, even though it was $20 or 20 euros more expensive than previously.
I think overall, I mean, microtransactions obviously came from the the smaller free-to-play games on the mobile platforms like iPhone and Android. I think one of the other things is as well, I think they're kind of linked together. This early access or pre-order system, which has kind of come from the indie scene. It seems like if you had to actually point at a problem, it's that these major studios that are releasing full price games and have the budgets to back these back these productions up are essentially starting to employ some of the trickery and money making sort of methods of the smaller indie and mobile platforms. I mean, the pre-order one, I guess it's not quite as bad as the whole, Kickstarter and early access nonsense, which I think people are mostly sick of by now. But yeah, just this idea of selling a product that doesn't even exist yet, where they'll have a fancy, enhanced pre-rendered trailer at E3. They'll take pre-orders on that product, and then the product that comes out isn't necessarily what was seen at E3 that those pre-order purchases were made for. There seems to be, and I think it has come from the indie scene, where it's this whole early access, where if you pay us money now, you get early access to basically. You're paying for a product that doesn't exist yet, but we're going to make that game with the money, like the pre-purchase money.
Well, yeah, and I want to address this, but a final point is that sparse DLC, that the DLC release these days, it doesn't cover a whole lot. And I hate to bring up CD Projekt Red, but the game, their previous game, The Witcher 3, which was an international hit, Game of the Year 2015 for obvious reasons, dozens of prizes, all warranted in my view. And I'm finally getting around to Blood and Wine. I think the expansion is better than the main game in a lot of ways. Really well done. They have expansion packs, which are, they add a total of maybe 50 hours of extra gameplay, new items, new monsters, new story, great story, interesting choices. And then they had free DLC all on the way, whether it was cosmetic stuff or little quests added that were pretty cool too. And they've fallen prey to the pre-render thing too to some degree, but generally speaking, they're pretty solid in their promises. So the stuff you addressed, it seems that coincides with what I'm talking about, is the overarching tendency, the overwhelming tendency for most companies these days. And then you have to think, why are people falling for it? Last year, I'll give you an example. Ubisoft, they Dishonored, this game it's kind of it's a fictional setting where the world is sort of dried up and there are three factions, sort of Vikings, or they're similar to Vikings, samurai, and medieval knights are sort of fighting each other. And it looked absolutely brilliant in the initial release. I thought, wow, this could be really, PvP, swords and axes and shields. They show the actual game recently, and I'm just thinking, I'm not going to be getting. I'll wait for the reviews. So,
well, that was, now that it's the same thing, right? Now that we've actually seen actual in-game footage of Andromeda, it doesn't look much like it did at
oh yeah, well, yeah, that's EA, Bioware. That's unto itself a mystery. What's going on with that game? But yeah, the highfalutin promises. And the funny thing about that the only thing they've shown was that the guy insisted you have to check this out in 4K. It's the PlayStation Plus, is that what it's called, the new console?
Yeah.
So, and people repeatedly, this whole system of essentially ripping people off and producing secondhand products or kind of shit quality products. If people rejected that, it wouldn't work. They would have to be quality, right? If you said, well, what are you doing? We're not going to buy this. But people still buy it. And so the model works, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that's an argument that's been made a lot, and you can make it to a lot of things, if people stopped buying iPhones, or if people, a big one that I notice is Madden, right? Like Madden football is basically, and there's other games as well. Most of those sports games, I know CS likes to play the football manager, FIFA football manager, and even he admits it's basically the same game every year with a different player roster. Yeah. But the thing about that is, I think it's the way that it's marketed isn't necessarily pernicious. I know people that buy Madden. I know at least one person that buys the Madden game each year, but they know what they're getting. It's not like the kind of false promises and chicanery that's going into a lot of the like Watch Dogs, No Man's Sky. As just said, like the gameplay. Actual gameplay footage that we've now seen from Andromeda that doesn't look anything like the trailer that was shown at the pre-rendered trailer shown at E3. Like, I think people. I don't think Madden's a particularly good game, but people are prepared to pay full price for it each year when it comes out. I guess that's their choice, but at least it's an informed choice. I think my problem is more with these. The chicanery that's going on.
Well, the chicanery, right, but someone who, in his roots and in his soul is still, I play other games, obviously, like Overwatch occasionally, I used to play Ghost Recon, but a single-player RPG guy, there's something just disturbing about the trend, because Madden new player roster, or FIFA, or whatever, or the NFL game. That is NFL, right? So that's fine. I don't play them, and I get it. But having a story that is just holy and full of inconsistencies that can only be resolved far later down the line, I find is a disturbing practice, because I finished Deus Ex being Mankind Divided, being completely unsatisfied. I was going to do a second playthrough, maybe I will at some point in time, but I don't really have the motivation. And meanwhile, I'm playing Witcher 3: Blood and Wine. I'm thinking, wow, the expansion is in some ways better than the main story. This is just incredible. The art as well, the graphics are amazing. The landscape, it looks like a fairy tale. And why so many companies have drifted. Well, I know why. They can make money. Bethesda, I mean, Fallout 4 by far, I think you could ask anyone who's been an aficionado of the Fallout series and the Bethesda genre style games in general, received the most criticism of all the games. Hitherto, I know you like just running around shooting things, so it appealed to you, but the lack of story.
Even I had problems with it. I suppose we had this conversation in private ages ago when I was actually playing through it, but it's very clear that there are aspects of that game that have come from an RPG platform that don't translate well to first-person shooters. When I shoot someone in the head with a sniper rifle, they should die. But the combat system, despite being a first-person shooter, the combat system in that game was very much like what do you call it? Like a critical hit type system where you actually, it's almost like a dice roll as to how much damage you're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that was an issue, but I mean, Fallout historically had been an RPG, so.
Yeah, I'm just saying that even from the first-person point of view, where I like to run around shooting things, like from that point of view, even though it's probably a far weaker game story-wise, Far Cry 4 is more satisfying as just like
but Colttaine, let's be sure here. Let's be fair. I mean, there were criticisms. The major criticism of Fallout 4 is that the story was just garbage. The interactions. The first time ever Bethesda integrated so-called voice characters. Now, Bethesda previously had received criticism on account of, well, the modern trend in gaming is to have a voice protagonist. You can't not do that. Well, it turned out to be a complete failure in Fallout. You lost out on options. The dialogue was pretty fixed. You were forced to play goody two-shoes, although apparently in the recent DLC involving like an amusement park or what have you, you can play a bad person, but even that was poorly integrated. According to what I've read, is that you can play a raider, a kind of evil person, but all you end up doing is undoing the good work you were forced to do prior to the DLC because reasons. Because so you're forced to play a good guy. You remember the Minutemen, right? So you join the Minutemen, rebuild the Commonwealth, blah blah blah, and then there's new DLC rolls out when you can finally be a raider and take over settlements. So you fight the people that you used to do the work for. It's the whole game is just wonky and limited choices. You don't really care about the story. The game never really makes you care about the core characters. But the great thing, of course, is you had a voice protagonist, so you felt, I guess, like the character's alive. But that's not. People's criticism was just immense of the voice character, of that style, of the lack of storytelling. And to be fair, Fallout New Vegas, the storytelling was just a lot better. But then again, Obsidian wrote it, so yeah, I don't really. Bethesda's heading down a really dark portal in my way, because in my way of thinking, for that reason, and the fact that recently Todd Howard, he was formerly known as God Howard, but let's face it, he's just a mere mortal. He said something along the lines of, well, we're working on 2 new IPs. Well, that's great. Because people are hungry, myself included, super hungry for the next Elder Scrolls. I had over 3,000 hours clocked in on Skyrim. I love that. I played different iterations, modded in so many different... It was a great game overall, but the modding scene really made it come to life. So people are just thirsty for that game. And by the looks of it, it seems like...
Was it 2020 or something?
2020, 2021. This seems to be the interpretation of what's been said. And in response to this, if I just want to finish up here, is that this issue of, well, we want to expand. To my mind, and I know it's not a perfect analogy, but let's say you have a malt whiskey producer, for generations. They make amazing malt whiskeys, the best ever. And people want the next edition or, whatever. That's what they like. And they say, you know what, guys, we're going to import oranges from Florida and Spain, and we're going to make new orange juice. This is our new project. And until we get the orange juice right, we're not going to make malt whiskey. That, to me, that's what they're doing. You don't screw up a product, a mainstay product, and neglect it because you want to work on something completely new. Anyway, rant over.
Well, I think part of the problem and part of why I suspect there's going to be such a big gap between now and when the next Elder Scroll game is going to come out is in part due to the fact that you want to talk about it in terms of alcohol production. They weren't sterilizing their equipment properly. So for the last 100 years, they've been producing good whiskey, but they haven't been cleaning anything. And as a result, now they're starting to get bacterial infections.
That's actually not a bad. That's a good way of putting it. I mean, they need if you're referring to the lack of a new engine, there needs to be a new engine. They mentioned that.
For a full price game, I have to say that the limitations of their engine were showing in, because I can't remember what it. Yeah, that's right. At the same time that I was playing Fallout 4, I just finished Wolfenstein. Is it New Order? Yeah, I think Wolfenstein New Order, which was an exquisite game, visually, storytelling. It was actually written by Bethesda as well, but it used the ID engine, and it was just a vastly different experience. Like Fallout 4, visually, game mechanics wise, it felt very dated compared to the experience I got from Wolfenstein.
And to be fair, I think Todd Howard has acknowledged this. He said that to release the next Elder Scrolls, the technology doesn't exist yet. I mean, intimation.
Well, I mean, the technology doesn't exist yet, quote unquote. What he really means is that they didn't spend enough time during their development cycles putting new stuff in. I mean, I don't think compare the Fallout 4 to Witcher 3. I mean, they're vastly different.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly happy with the technology in Witcher 3. This isn't a problem that the technology doesn't exist. The problem is that I don't think they spent enough effort and time during their development cycles to make the improvements to Fallout 4 that were needed. And basically what you have now is a game that just isn't up to scratch against other games on the market.
Agreed. It's definitely an issue. But here's the thing. I guess it just comes down to business ethics or dedication to a principle, because I've heard the head of CD Projekt Red speak, and he says that they'll literally turn down shareholders. Say, well, we're going to do this, and if you don't like it, well, I understand, you won't be a shareholder or whatever. But every other company just toes the party line. And it just feels like Bethesda, it's a real betrayal, because that's what we care about as fans of the Elders. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they're going to release some cool IPs, and maybe they'll be good. Maybe they'll be like, your Wolfenstein game or whatever. But the thing that compels people to Elder Scrolls primarily has always been that series of Elder Scrolls, not Fallout. Fallout to a much lesser extent because they acquired it later. So why not make the very best Elder Scrolls ever? Use a completely new engine. Create a new engine, maybe borrow an engine, add new features, make it even more expansive, make it just the best ever. I mean, make it the best malt whiskey ever produced. Instead of saying, well, we're going to work on orange juice with pulp and orange juice with, without pulp, and these are going to be our new products. I mean, that's not what people want.
Yeah, and I mean, I think they are probably working on that. I mean, the problem is that they've let the engine get into such a state of disrepair that it's almost going to have to be a from scratch build to be competitive again. Which means,
I suspect so. Yeah, it's very depressing.
We're looking 4 or 5 years away.
But I also think that Bethesda has gotten it into its heads that it's a bit of an ego thing. I think Todd Howard suffers from this, and so does Pete Hines, who does a lot of the public relations. I think they want to prove to the world that they can do stuff other than Elder Scrolls and Fallout. I mean, in my view, they failed Fallout. I have the expansion because I had long ago acquired the DLC before it was raised in price, but I don't really have any interest in playing through it, and they want to say, no, guys, we can do other stuff too. We're going to bring out 2 amazing IPs. You'll be blown away. And hey, I'm always open to evidence and new experiences. So yeah, maybe I will be blown away. But at the end of the day, the thing that people really want, once again, is not orange juice from a company that produces malt whiskeys. It's just, they're both liquids. I get it, but I mean, imagine if Bethesda came out with a new IP is a baseball game. I don't really think that's going to be the case. But guys, you see, we can make amazing baseball, and maybe it is a good baseball game. Maybe they'll get new customers, but people don't understand in the gaming world the proportions of Skyrim. Skyrim itself was pretty good. It just and there were a lot of problems with it were fixed by the community, but the impact, especially through modding and what I mean. You have whole channels that grew out of nothing. I mean, Mox Mods, the ass and tits guy, who's still around. He's got 1,500,000 subs, making tons of money off of YouTube, just because of the tits and ass modding scene in Skyrim. Literally, here's a guy pulling in probably 6 figures a year now on YouTube because not through any work of his own, but because a bunch of people wanted to, create models of women with F cups whose tits bounce when they run. I mean, it's incredible, but I'm not saying that's a great thing. I don't really actually think that's a good thing. I don't like his channel, but the point. And then there's Gopher, who's a quality content producer. Everyone knows Gopher, who made video tutorials on modding because the modding scene was so huge. So there was a huge cultural gaming impact due to Skyrim. Not because Skyrim was a good game, was even a great game, but it's just the after effect of that. And to not build on that momentum, to my mind, it borders insanity. And saying, no, we're going to do something else. Guys, look at what you did with Skyrim. So what do they do instead? I'm sure you heard about this. They released a new version of Skyrim with some graphical improvements for systems like PlayStation and Xbox, and nothing you couldn't get from PC mods anyway. But
well, I mean, and that's I sort of kind of got off on a different tangent there, but I actually I don't know how trends are going to go for the foreseeable future either, based on that kind of technological limitation. I mean, just on the issue of the PlayStation Plus being 4K, for example. I mean, basically, the general formula is that if you double the image size, so you go from 2K, which is basically about HD, to 4K. So you double the diagonal of the screen, but you quadruple the surface area and the number of pixels. So essentially, your processing power has to go up by 4 to do the same thing. And this generation of consoles was lacking from the beginning. I mean, there's a number of games that had to be visually downgraded just to get them running at 30 frames a second at 720p. The console scene has some major problems that need to be rectified before they should be thinking about 4K.
Yeah, well, I mean, and let's be honest. There's been people joke about it, but there is a legitimate tension between the master race and the console peasants. I mean, this has been ongoing, and I think a lot of people voluntarily consign themselves to the realm of console peasantry because they think that PC gaming necessarily has to be more expensive. I mean, yeah, you can buy a really nice computer and the best GPU, but you can still get a decent rig that's going to run shit, 3, 4, 5 times better than a console. So there's this persistent myth that console gaming is cheaper, more cost effective than PC gaming, even if you want to be particularly parsimonious.
Well, that's not even true in terms of, like, everything that comes out on console comes out at full price, and PlayStation, like Sony and Microsoft, take their cut. It takes longer for things to basically end up in the bargain bin, as it were. Yeah.
Well, there's no Steam for console, so there's no summer winter sale.
Well, this is the thing, is that I've got a friend who has basically all three consoles and PC, and for the money that he spent on all of them separately, I think he's spent the least on PC, but it's got the biggest library, just because, when Steam sales come up, he buys the things that he wants. Nintendo is particularly bad for this, where Nintendo basically don't drop the prices on their games at all. So it's a very, I mean, first off, I guess, like from an initial purchase point of view, a PlayStation is cheaper than a PC, but in the long run, you're probably going to get more playability for the game purchases and stuff out of the PC. I'm sure this is still true. It used to be the fact that consoles actually sold at a loss. Like Microsoft and Sony, I haven't looked into this. I'm assuming that they're still using the same business model, but they actually sell the consoles at a loss. Microsoft and Sony don't actually make their money back on that hardware console until you buy 3 or 4 licensed games for that platform.
No.
So I mean, they will get the money. Like they intentionally drop the price of the console, but they will get that money out of you in the long run. But that's not even what I was getting at. I mean, what I was getting at was, what if you're running GTX 1080? Yeah.
No, I have the prior, so GTX 980 Ti.
Yeah. Well, I'm just looking at it now. Like, so you got the GTX 1080, which is a phenomenally powerful card. That's $1,000 right now. So even assuming that when the PlayStation Plus comes out, let's say it's 500 kangaroo dollars, you're essentially getting an entire machine at half the price and what like the top NVIDIA graphics card is at the moment. Like, you just know that what's going to come out of that console can't compare to what a PC is capable of.
But you also have the reliability that you'll be able to run everything that's set up for it. I mean,
well, that even that I don't know is true. I mean, I had a friend who he bought an Xbox because he wanted to play Forza Racing, and he had the console for about a week, because it used to be, the problem with PC used to be that you buy a game from the store, and then you have to fuck around with drivers and downloading updates. I remember my first experience with Steam was horrible. Steam was originally built as a patch delivery system for Half-Life 2. And this is back in the days. I was still on 56k dial-up at the time. My friend got Half-Life 2, put the disc in, it installed Steam, and then basically wanted to install like a 2 gigabyte update to Half-Life 2 before he could play it. It literally took him 2 days of downloading before he could actually play the game. Console used to be, you get the game, you put it in, and you play. That was the appeal of it. But this friend of mine was saying that the first time he put in Forza, there was something like a 20 gigabyte download. It took him 6 hours before he could actually play the game. And then every time he subsequently put the game in after that, it spent 20 minutes updating. He had to sit there waiting for 20 minutes every time he wanted to play the game. So he just got rid of the console. They really are just low-powered PCs at this point.
I'm trying to remember how many gigabytes the GPU of the newest console. I think it's like 6. So that's pretty sad considering the power of the 1080. I mean, I'm content. Look, I'm content with my 980.
Well, I kind of got sidetracked. I mean, my problem isn't about being content with the hardware. My problem is that games are developed to be cross-platform. Like, a developer almost has to cover as many platforms as they can to make their profit. Because if they don't release a PlayStation version, for example, that's millions and millions of units that they can't sell.
Yeah.
But the problem is that they then have to cater to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
I think our current generation of games could be much much better than what they are, but because they're being developed for the consoles, it's actually even worse. It's a double hit. They're being developed for the consoles, which are an underpowered system to begin with, but then they're doing really cheap, nasty ports back to PC.
Yeah.
So games like, the No Man's Sky has gotten a lot of bad press for its PC port recently, but I think, immediately jumping to mind, the big one would be Arkham Knight.
I heard stories about that one, a lot of stories.
Yeah, just a horrible, horrible port to PC. Like it was virtually unplayable, but that shouldn't be the case. The PC should be able to do 10 times what a console can do and then some. But it's just because of the current direction.
Well, I think it might behoove us a little bit to talk about the attraction of the console. I think the attraction of the console is strange. As a member of the master race myself, I can understand why people would choose to be a peasant. You come home from work and all you want to do is plop yourself on the couch. You don't want to sit in a chair. You've been sitting in a chair all day from your office, right? Boot up a computer, and there's something, I guess almost counterintuitive that. Whereas a console, it's so soft, the couch is soft. I have a controller, I can play from a distance. So there's a kind of it's kind of a appeal to comfort. It's like console, yeah, it's shittier. Everything is shittier about consoles, but hey, it's comfortable, and I think there's a very strong degree of attraction to that element, rather than just the financial aspects or what have you. It's just, I can just plop myself down on the couch, and look, I'm not condoning peasantry. I fully support the PC master race. I've gone on record. I wouldn't say never, but I can't ever imagine owning a console or playing a console. But I understand the appeal of not wanting to, sit prostrate in a chair and, especially after that's your work day. That doesn't make sense, so.
Yeah. Yeah, and I get all of that. It's just the problem is that it's not a it's not a demarcated market anymore. Like back in the day, I remember, my first PC, I was playing, Half-Life and Command and Conquer and stuff. It wasn't really until the PlayStation came out that the original PSX came out that you started seeing cross-platform titles. Before that, Nintendo games were Nintendo. Sega games were Sega. Like you didn't really see a lot of cross between them, and PC games were mostly PC. But yeah, it wasn't until
and I think that people had a natural understanding of that. It's funny, I was chatting with Millennial Woes the other night, and he asked me, were you a Nintendo or a Sega guy? And I immediately I could respond. I said, well, I was a Nintendo guy, obviously. Because there was that division. It was clear.
Yeah,
you either played one or the other.
Yeah, well, and the further divide. My household, I've never owned a console, never. My household, we had an Apple IIe, so I remember playing games on that. But yeah, it wasn't a console. Like I had friends that had consoles, but yeah, I was always keyboard and mouse.
Yeah, and I still remember Super Nintendo from the 80s, me being really old. So, that was my first experience. And then we went, my father had always been a Luddite, I guess, because he comes from the old world. And we didn't get a workable VCR till the late 90s. And it was, so my PC experience was very late. And I've literally since then had to spend a lot I'm not PC savvy, I would compare to you or other people, but I had to just catch up on a lot of stuff. And but having then sort of been initiated to that after a huge gap between Super Nintendo and PC gaming, I just can't envision playing on console for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Well, it's just
once you've owned a Porsche, you don't want to go back to a Fiat Panda.
I imagine. It's kind of just the things you can do. I think systems like Steam, GOG.com, there are so many more options for purchasing. There are PC exclusives that I enjoy. I like Pillars of Eternity. I didn't love it, but well, okay, they're also console exclusive. But people who are willing to really invest the energy for PC stuff into PC stuff, and I also think the PC community is more mature. I mean, on online gaming, you'll notice that you'll tend to get far more degenerate people on console. On average, that's true. I mean, younger people.
Leafy is here.
Well, Leafy notwithstanding, in my experience, it's always people complain, on online games, man, the console people are just. I'm not saying PC people are great. I've dealt with a lot of shitty PC people, but overall, the master race tends to be a little bit more tolerable in the online gaming scene.
One of my friends kind of refers to the console players as the dude bros.
Hey, dude.
So kind of like your PC gamers are kind of like the long-standing downtrodden geeks who kind of grew up through the 90s and early thousands being looked down upon, whereas the console are kind of like the casual, football jock who comes home from practice and knocks out a few, games of Call of Duty. It seems to be a different market demographic.
I think so, and it's strange. There's almost a kind of socioeconomic class distinction there, and I think that's why there's some truth to PC master race versus console peasant. It's
And I would say it doesn't even stop there. I mean, you flat out cannot have the kind of modding community that Skyrim had on a console. Like it just.
But Colttaine, the point is that console people wouldn't be that invested in the mods. I mean, they're the kinds of people who do one playthrough and that's it.
Yeah, but I mean, that notwithstanding, they literally couldn't do it. You can't. They don't have like the SDKs and development platforms to run on console.
Oh yeah,
you need a computer to do that, like coding and stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I mean, they're releasing mods for console now because they want to get it on the market for the new Skyrim edition. I don't remember the exact name of that new edition. It's not relevant. You get it automatically on PC for obvious reasons. But getting back to the developer's path, I mean, my concern is that one by one, companies will fold and follow, go down the path of damnation. I'm even concerned a little bit, not much, about CD Projekt Red, because the next big thing is Cyberpunk 2077. They have gone on record saying that Cyberpunk 2077 has to be better than The Witcher 3. It's got to be the best thing they ever made. And they're going to hire, twice as many people to work on it. I mean, they are working on it, but, for the final push or whatever. So that's encouraging. But, I mean, I remember when games were remarkable, where you can think about them as being such and remembering them as such for just a really, really long time. And I don't, like I said, Mankind Divided, played through it, cool, Adam Jensen, nifty augmentations, whatever, but I just felt it incredibly lacking in a lot of ways. Fallout 4 was a disaster. Even Skyrim, and I've seen there's a small channel, can't remember his name, but he small gaming channel, but he's talked about this. Skyrim by itself wasn't all that impressive. It was pretty good, don't get me wrong, and there were some nice additions, but the modding community, bug fixes, patches, graphical enhancements, combat, modularity, that they were responsible. The modding community, the PC modding community, to whom I'm eternally grateful, made Skyrim the game it is, elevated people who are essentially like MRX Mods. He's a fucking idiot, but he's a wealthy idiot now because people decided to make tits and ass mods for him.
Well, I mean, this kind of, I guess, is a perfect point to segue into the current goings on with The Division. I mean, one has to ask the question that although Skyrim was great, and you're saying a large part of that was due to the modding community rather than the base game. Like I know a big one was Sky UI.
Sky UI was fucking. Sky UI revolutionized the concept of modding, in my opinion, and obviously carried over to Fallout 4. But People are going to want that in the future, basically.
Yeah, but there's two questions on this. The first one being, should it be the community's responsibility to fix stuff in a full-priced game that was botched by the developers? Secondly, and I suspect there's been a lot of controversy over this back and forth, and I suspect it was because they're eventually going to roll this shit out onto the consoles. Should end users who paid full price for the game be expected to, pay for, quote unquote mods that basically patch things that the developers botched in the base product?
Excellent questions. We should talk about the Division. Let's specifically, before we get to the Division, there's a lot to say there, talk about Skyrim. I wholeheartedly agree with you. It shouldn't ideally be the responsibility of the modding community to fix the innumerable bugs that Bethesda has, frankly speaking, come to be known for. But and like I said, it's a good game by itself. But the fact of the matter is, I wouldn't have had 3K plus hours on Skyrim if it hadn't been for the modding community. So I definitely agree with you. And there is an element, and people point this at laziness of Bethesda, where they're maybe not vocalizing it, but tacitly saying, or maybe talking amongst themselves, well, the modding community will fix this. We can get enough of the bugs and the jitters out, and then we'll just wait for the modders to fix it. But and this is just kind of reality as it is. I mean, it was a good game, but the modders made it a great game. Yeah. But this just tells me the lack of gratitude that Bethesda has towards modders who invested literally hundreds and hundreds of hours into mods to improve the game, to make it a great thing, and their lack of recognition. Because I think they should acknowledge the great work modders have done, and then say, well, we need to make it even better. We need to work on our game even more. But my worry, like Fallout 4, which was kind of a semi-unfinished game, very, very holy, is that they're going to rely on modders even more down the line. So maybe they'll just spend a lot of time working on a new engine so it looks pretty, but there are, 20 other bugs that are never addressed, or gameplay or whatever. So no, you're right. It shouldn't be addressed. Now, speaking of the Division, this is precisely the issue. Some people here might know a guy named Skillup. He's a fellow Australian who suffers from extreme blue pillism and liberalism and also just sort of positivity, the stuff I address. And so the designers of Division, Massive, have a couple of weeks ago, or it's maybe a month ago, they came out and said, essentially, our game, you watched it, I guess, so you remember, our game is fucked up. There are just there are tons of problems in the game, but we're going to ask you, the community, and what we can do to improve it. And SkillUp took this sort of PR spin position. And I can't believe I used to support that guy, but whatever. Well, it takes a lot of balls to come out in the gaming industry and say, look, we have a lot of problems with our game and blah, 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 blah. And okay. Yeah. And I'm just thinking.
Well, his spin was basically, from what I remember of that video, he was like, look, this is an opportunity that, this is a really unique opportunity for us to have, as the users, to have input into the development of the game. The question that should be asked is, why have they released a botched, like a botched full price AAA title, and then several months later, after the community around it has basically died out, they basically expect whoever's left to run like beta testing for them.
Yeah, and like
they're expecting.
And to be fair, I played a lot. I think it was in April. I had over 300 hours clocked in, but there were so many problems with the grind, the lack of end game content, and what SkillUp has said regarding, say, the Dark Zone. The Dark Zone, for those you don't know, you have the normal zone in Division, the Dark Zone, which is a PvP area, but it did in some ways sort of break boundaries. I mean, the Dark Zone turns you into a fucking asshole. It turned me into an asshole. I went in there thinking, okay, if there are enemies there, like AI enemies, and I guess if you see some bad guys, you can shoot them. But generally the spirit of I'm going to help this guy out. He got knocked down or whatever, or let me heal him up, only to be shot in the back. And it happens to you enough times, and all of a sudden you start doing that too. You start, lying in ambush. Out of the blue, you kill people. I mean,
which is great in a game like DayZ, which has its own,
that's the premise,
development horror story. But I mean,
so you don't really know who to trust except the people in your group. Anyone can turn on you at any time. It's an interesting psychological experiment in terms of game theory, and half the time it doesn't have anything to do with it. I mean, you're just sort of lying there. Some guy is, I don't know, healing himself or engaged with combat with AI, and you just sneak up behind him and shoot him in the head with a shotgun and steal his shit. Now, it's an interesting concept, but for some reason, a lot of people feel like it doesn't resonate with them. I actually liked it to some degree. It turned me into a righteous asshole. That's true, but it was mostly the hacking. I mean, there were hackers everywhere, and it just you try to change servers, right? And then there were other hackers there, and it became the dark zone. And allegedly they fixed a lot of this, but I don't know. It became unplayable because I couldn't engage in combat with other players because they were hackers that had, one shot, one kill shotguns at 500 meters away or something, and it wasn't fun. And then lack of content and all the bugs and the lack of balancing. And then they released.
From what I understand, I mean, parts of that were fundamentally unfixable because they had a client-side connection system.
Yeah, that's right, Colttaine. This is the other issue. I mean, they spent years working on this game. I think 2013 they showed in typical Ubisoft fashion, as you pointed out, the pre-rendered version, which looked fabulous. And me being a native New Yorker that will always probably even identify as New Yorker before as I do as an American, thinking, wow, the Brooklyn Bridge and all this stuff is great, But then I saw it, it was like amazing, and then it was releasing.
Yeah, well, they were basically touting as some their revolutionary new engine. It was like
Snowdrop
Frostbite or Snowdrop? Yeah,
Snowdrop. And I'm just, and the engine's good. The final nail in the coffin for me was a bunch of DLC. I think it was called Falcon Lost, which. It's not cheating, but turned into a glitch fest. People would research glitches, find them out, and then figure it out, and then people would just exploit the glitch ad nauseum to get the best gear in a period of time of a few hours or a day when it's supposed to take 4 weeks, And then people were then running to the dark zone, using this advanced stuff, and they had to create new categories in the dark zone, but that still didn't work. And I mean, to this day, I think the game is still a mess, and you'll still hear Skill Up talk about, we need to transition. The funny thing about Skill Up, and I kind of feel bad for him, he's incredibly blue pill. He actually investigated the MGTOW phenomenon and kind of, you're a bunch of hateful misogynists, whatever. I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. But is that gaming on YouTube, gaming channels, and I don't do much for my own, it's more of an occasional thing when I feel inclined. It's hit or miss. It's a risk. It's a risk. If you bet on the wrong game, there will be stuff with it. So you can look at the view count on his channel, Skill Up, and you can see the game. Even with the loss in player base and Division, that's what people come to him for, to talk about the Division. When he talks about Battlefield or Overwatch or other games, his view counter, he literally gets barely more views than I could get on my gaming channel of humble 6,000 subs when he's about 80K right now. So he's stuck there. He might secretly actually acknowledge that the Division is fundamentally broken, and if it is fixable, it might require 2 to 3 years. But because he wants to make it on, I mean, he has a separate income. I think he's some pencil pusher that works for his wife. But
gambler's fallacy, I guess. He's too invested in it now.
It's essentially the guy. Like he can't leave the Division even if he wanted to. Although he's talked a lot about Battlefield, the new one, and there's a lot of hype on that. And there will be new gaming channels, without a doubt, that will rise based on battle. Like, here I am, guys. I'm all about the Battlefield 1. Check me out. And yeah, maybe it'll be a really good game. Maybe it won't be. And so a lot of that, there's another guy, Marco Style. He's another Division guy who's kind of locked into that because of gambler's fallacy. And then there are games that seem eternal, like MRX Moz. I mean, I know I keep on mentioning it just because I absolutely loathe him. He looks like a prepubescent idiot who, I mean, he traveled to Germany for the Gamescom and
Gamescom, yeah.
Yeah, and he just sounded like an idiot. He didn't even know the currency in Europe. What kind of currency do they use here? What language do they speak here? It was incredible. But this guy is just I mean, whatever. The point is that this guy profited from people's lust and interest in pornography to make essentially pornographic mods. Oh, that's great. He bet right. Other people haven't bet so right. And
well, tits and ass is always a safe bet.
Well, right. There's something, make a video about, I don't know, cultivating maize or something, and but the thumbnail is some, double D model in a bikini, then yeah, you'll do well, at least initially. But I guess, and I've even considered, relaunching a gaming channel based on it, but it'd be so time consuming, and there aren't any games that I find compelling enough. But yeah, that whole industry or YouTube.
I mean, even on that point, I mean, your original Stardust LP more or less grew out of the build videos that you were doing on the
Mass Effect 3
Mass Effect online, yeah.
Yeah, and of course that died down eventually, so you lost the momentum, and then you need to find a way to transition. Now, I think that actually, Colttaine, this is universal. I mean, Thunderfoot started off dissing atheists, and then he pivoted to feminists, and I don't know what the next big thing is. I suspect it would probably be sort of anti-alt-right stuff, whatever. But you got to pivot all the time. But with games, it's a little bit different, and because
it's a much faster market.
Yeah, and people really feel it's you look at a guy like SkillUp, and it's just thinking, well, no, dude, why are you making videos about Overwatch? I mean, I don't play that game. And the problem with Overwatch is the people who bet on the Overwatch game have really done pretty well because Overwatch is huge, and I'm playing a lot less of it these days than I used to. But
well, I would say, just based on what I've seen, because I think part of the big problem is long-term playability. Division didn't have it. A lot of games don't have it. I mean, even as you were saying, Mass Effect Online eventually died out. You can kind of pick some of the games that are going to stay around for the long haul. The longest one that's been running, obviously, was World of Warcraft, which I think is a kind of a bit of an aberration. But when you look at the other stuff, they all seem to be games that translate well into I guess you would say professional esport. StarCraft. I mean, there's still Korean TV and stuff dedicated to StarCraft. Team Fortress, Overwatch, Dota. If I was, I mean, and this is one of the problems, to actually be successful at making videos on those games, you probably have to be good at the games, which is not insignificant.
I thought that too, Colton. I mean, it's funny. I watch some of these Overwatch channels, and there are a few good ones. I don't know if anyone plays Overwatch, Professor Ganny. Professor Ganny here, class in session. But there are some there, they're just not that good. And they actually sound like idiots. I got really annoyed the other day by a video on a channel called Overwatch Central, all your news for Overwatch. I mean, I spent a lot of time working on this new character. She's not new anymore. She's Anna, who's a support character. You watched my video. I made a guide.
Yeah, was it Inglorious Hero?
The Inglorious Heroine. And I just think, these guys are coming out with a video, almost 3 months after the character is released, talking about, oh, well, she's actually pretty good. I hate to say it there, buddy, but I was playing her before it was cool, and I was fucking getting shit on and saying, you can't play Anna, you can't do that. And, I've swayed, back and forth, but I've gotten as high as in the, top 3% of Anna players. So, they get annoyed with shit like that. Guys, they're not even that good players. And it's more for the news, and they'll just pump out any piece of shit on Overwatch, and it'll be acceptable. So Overwatch was a huge hit. Division, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I would have thought that you'd have to have some decent level of skill to be able to make
No,
videos
you
on
know,
the
it's
topic.
interesting.
But
Colttaine is a lot of it comes down to personality. I've observed. There's another
yeah,
guy, called Unit Lost with Great British Gaming. I sort of sarcastically refer to him as Unit Found, terrible British Gaming, but he's actually a pretty good player overall. But his talent is to sound positive and and engaging. He'll make he made a video a couple of weeks ago. I don't know, guys, but I've just been raging and I'm so frustrated and I'm taking it too seriously. And like, what do you guys think? That kind of engagement. I
yeah,
think that goes a lot longer way than actually being skilled, because if you're skilled but you don't have a personality, I mean, people will watch you, but it's not going to draw them in the same way. So it's interesting in that whole scene that people who just really aren't amazing or even that good of players will still get a lot of attention despite that, because they have the right personality. I mean, one of the reasons why I think I will always fundamentally fail as a gaming channel, I mean, to grow it or to even start a new one, is because I'm a kind of slow-paced, monotone guy, and some people like that, but I don't have that person. Hey guys, check it out, man! It's fucking amazing. This new gun, guys, you got to try it out. What do you guys think about the gun? Like, that's not me. I mean, I can do it, I can imitate it, but it's not really. It's a strain for me. So if it naturally comes to you, though, I mean, it's not a bad thing.
yeah.
I'm
Well,
actually
I guess
looking at SkillUp's channel right now, and the vast majority are, of course, Division. So you look at the numbers, it's so funny. So he got his most recent video, Division, about 18,000 views. After that, Destiny, not even 2,000. Overwatch, barely over 5,000. It's absolutely incredible that it's very clear that he's locked into that model.
Yeah, well, I would basically say, I don't know, like, perhaps you don't need to be skilled at the game to do it. Like, just run off, pure charisma. But what I would say is that if you were in the market to start up a gaming channel that you wanted to become successful, I would be looking at the long term. I'd be looking at games that, like Overwatch, like Dota, that are kind of solid esport games that are probably here to stay for the foreseeable future.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't see. I mean, I've got. I mean, shit. Team Fortress 2 has been going for, what, 10 years, decade. And I mean, the Overwatch. I mean, if we're being honest, Overwatch is kind of Team Fortress 3.
It's an improved version of it. Yeah, that's absolutely
it's basically Team Fortress 3. So if I was banking on the long haul, and I mean, as we've seen with, I mean, it's kind of been taken over now by Valve, and they've released Dota 2. The original Dota, I'm assuming most people would know, the original Dota was actually a mod to Blizzard's what was it called? Warcraft 3. So I kind of, you look at World of Warcraft, you look at Dota, you look at Overwatch. It's kind of like the competitive online formula. It's kind of like an improved Team Fortress. It's developed by Blizzard. I would say that would be the best investment long term.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, and even then, I think Overwatch right now is already oversaturated. So if you wanted to start up a new,
you'd have to have something novel.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate thing to say. It's just, yeah, and it's hard, and I think the personality is essential. I mean, it's weird. So you look at my own channel, Thinking-Ape. I mean, the fact that I'm kind of a slow-paced, monotone guy, I mean, it kind of suits that. I mean, if I came onto my channel, remember the one time I distorted my voice for, unfortunately, what I think is one of my better videos, a sort of mating. People hated it, and a lot of those they get accustomed to certain things. I totally get that. But otherwise, most YouTube genres require that sort of forced friendliness and positivity and all that other garbage. So I don't know. I think no matter what the game is, unless you're just amazing, hi, I'm top 10 players in the world, check me out, then you're gonna have you'll have potential problems down the line just because.
Yeah. Well, I guess the other option is you can try and just be a lot more broad.
Well, yeah, our
But then I
challenges
guess,
are broader. I mean, you look like
yeah,
Gopher's channel, who does mostly Let's Plays, but he does covers a lot of games. Nobody watches, but once again, they watch him for his personality. He's got this kind of very light but detectable
mm.
Mancunian accent, which people find appealing.
I was
Um,
thinking more like along the lines of, Total Biscuit and,
right, right.
what's his name, Yahtzee.
Well, Total Biscuit
Um,
is more as he's a professional game reviewer. It's not really the same thing. So taking a
mm,
game and basing a channel on it. So it's a really difficult genre to break into. And of course, you end up in difficult positions. I mean, with Skill Up, he's in a difficult position, because I don't claim to know what he really thinks, but let's be realistic. The um, Division has tons of problems, but he's got to kiss Ubisoft's and Masso's ass regardless, whether he wants to or not, because his
mm,
channel is all about the Division. I mean, Division
yeah.
could get even worse. I'm not saying it will. It probably will improve, but get even worse, lose even more of a fan base, a player base, and he still would be wedded to it and glued to it. So, I mean, I don't
Mm,
know. There are a lot of risks involved, but to be honest, my main concern is a lot less with these sort of Dota-esque, Overwatch-esque. I like Overwatch still. I don't play it as much, but it's more to do with the single-player RPG experience, which is just sort of getting lost.
mm.
Everyone wants to kind of get in a piece of the. As I said, I'm not a traditionalist, but yeah, I am in many ways, in certain respects, at least a traditionalist. I don't think a company whose hallmark it is to create a certain type of game should just give it up and say, guys, we're making orange juice now. I just
Mm.
don't. I don't like it. I don't think it works.
Well, I wouldn't even say that's traditionalism. That's just like a, quality of product, you know,
Well,
quality of
it's a
service.
combination of
It's,
quality of product and
it's just
tradition.
like, oh, well, because of the marketplace, we need to start cutting corners. All these people are doing the microtransactions. We need a piece of that pie too. I don't think it's traditionalism. It's just greed.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, it is just greed. But I, hmm, I, I don't know. It's a little bit more than that. It's so obvious, as I pointed out, and I've tried to instill some degree of passion. Is that whatever the base game was? I mean, the modding community, all these things came together, collaborated, and all of a sudden you got Skyrim, the biggest hit Bethesda ever had. And rather than building upon that momentum and I'm not saying release it this year or next year, but maybe not in 2020 or 2021. I mean, really work hard
Mm.
and make the best
That's
possible
a
game.
long time. I mean, the whole industry is going to be like 5 years, man. The whole industry is going to be different by then.
Oh yeah, and I think they've effectively by then might have lost the momentum. People will maybe forget a little bit the legacy of Skyrim, and so I think yeah, they made a critical mistake. And in 5 years' time, if I'm still alive and not indigent and all that other stuff, I mean, I love Elder Scrolls, so I'll probably play it. But it just if there's all this other stuff in the way in between, I don't know. And remember, Skyrim was released about five years ago. So there are usually these development cycles every 5 years. They don't have to release
Mm.
it every 5 years, but maybe six, seven, not 10, 11.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, you're talking to a guy who's still waiting for Half-Life 3, so
well, I suppose, and fortunately, there are some, still good game makers. Like I said, I really been playing through Blood and Wine, fantastic expansion, beautiful landscape. I mean, I really feel like I'm in a, surrounded in a I mean, almost sometimes photorealistic fantasy. It's absolutely stunning, and the story's great and all that other stuff. There are something, and there are games being released. Tyranny by Obsidian that looks like an interesting concept where you play sort of an adjudicator in an empire ruled by a god king. It's all evil, and you got to play an evil guy, and it's going to be difficult choices. And there's some interesting things coming up, but honestly, Bethesda is nearly dead to me. I mean, unless they're pulling a fast one, like, guys, we're just kidding. In fact, we're really, next year we're going to be showing you. But they've gone on record
mm,
saying they're not going to be showing anything this year and nothing next year related to Elder Scrolls. That leaves open 2018, I guess, but
Yeah.
it's still a while. So, obviously developers need to walk the difficult balance between rushing things, you don't want that, and taking their time to put in all the features they want. But they've said they're working on 2 new IPs, and actually what I thought was horrendously arrogant and supercilious on their part recently was an interview, I think it was about a month ago, saying, I mean, if you were to actually sort of translate it into what the guy actually meant, Peter Hines, who's the public relations guy, how dare you suggest that all we can make is Fallout and Elder Scrolls. We're not a slot. He used the term slot. We're not a slot machine. You just press a button, Fallout, and then Elder Scrolls, and then Fallout. We're not like that. We can do what we want. And I'm thinking, yeah, you can, but you need to understand why you have a fan base or why you have a player base that appreciates your games. If you come out with a new game that has just nothing to do with your product thus far, you might get a few new fans, but you're forgetting the people that made you. You have no sense of gratitude, appreciation, and that level of arrogance is just absolutely. I mean, that's somebody said. I remember him perfectly now. We're not a slot machine. We don't just do Fallout, press a button, and Elder Scrolls, press a button. You'll have to wait.
Well, I guess it's kind of similar to what the president of CD Projekt Red said about their, that they can do what they want, and if the shareholders don't like it, they can go and take their shares somewhere else. But I guess the difference is that CD Projekt Red kind of has the chops to back it up.
Yeah. They say, we're going to do this. I mean, I believe them. They're saying they're going to take on, I think they had 400 staff members thus far, and they're going to be adding another 400. And I just think, good on you guys. You're actually doing. Because I'm going to probably pre-order the only thing I'll pre-order, Cyberpunk 2077. I think that probably won't be released to 2018, but that's because they were really busy with Witcher and they're very thorough. When that game's released, it'll be a massive open world, a city, kind of fictional, but similar to New York, and there's just going to be a ton of stuff to do, and I have confidence in that. But My former love was, of course, Elder Scrolls, and it's kind of been dashed. Not to mention that despite the fact that the graphics sucked, I mean, things like Morrowind were just story-wise fundamentally better. And people have criticized, there's tons of people on YouTube, the regression there. But
I guess, Bethesda was always, the games that I look at, they've always kind of been famous for more the storytelling aspect than the... as you say, RPGs.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. But I don't know. I mean, I can't help but feel that the peasants are affecting the master race. I mean, people say, no, it's not true. The mentality and expectation of the console player affects how not only the technicalities of PC gaming, graphics but the storytelling, because console players, they don't read. They're not interested in role-playing games, generally speaking. It's why Obsidian produces exclusive titles for PC gamers, because we're much more likely to want to read about a story. Now, if you entertain the possibility of console people getting into Elder Scrolls, it's why Skyrim was dumbed down story-wise, because I'm sorry, but the peasant race is inferior in that regard. They're just people who plop themselves down on a couch and fire it up, and they're not interested. I mean, there'll be exceptions, but it's unusual,
Yeah. Well, if I'm being honest, man, Pillars of Eternity was even too much for me. It was
too old school, isometric. I wasn't blown away by it, but I think overall it's a very good game. It's got some interesting gameplay mechanics. The story was pretty interesting. I recently had a Skype chat with Smudboy, just an written exchange, and I think they made some critical mistakes there. There was a bit too much lore dump. I mean, you get so much to learn, and that's a concern going forward with their new game where you play the bad guy in Tyranny. But overall, they're just much better writers. I mean, it sounds like they put a lot of work into Tyranny. There'll be a lot of replayability. And well, to be fair, you're casual. I mean, you're not really...
Well, casual, but I do appreciate it. Actually, one of the best games that I played of recent years was the South Park Stick of Truth. And that was actually...
You mentioned
that was written by Obsidian.
Oh yeah, well, I mean they're really good. They have good writers on their team.
Well, sorry, I mean it was written by Trey Parker and Matt Stone, but yes, Obsidian basically put the game together and did all of the. They kind of took their ideas and turned it into a consistent RPG game.
Yeah, and I think that's why, I mean, there has been a resurgence in PC gaming to a degree, but the next Elder Scrolls, if it ever comes out, big if, my doubts are cemented in the fact that Skyrim had a lot of dumbed down story elements, and you really just needed modders to just recreate the game. And so the next Elder Scrolls might look visually fantastic, well, or not because of the console crap, but it's just gonna, and increasingly, I mean, the younger generation, I don't want to get on a tirade about unrelated issues, but I was playing on the U.S. servers a couple of weeks ago, and
Overwatch?
Yeah. Sorry, I should have mentioned Overwatch. Sometimes I do that just for the fun of it, and I also have a friend who's based in the States, and I can get an okay ping. It doesn't really go past 150, so it's playable. And I said something. You need to know Overwatch lingo. My ultimate, which is this ultimate ability. My ultimate will be ready. I said I think my ultimate will be ready in approximately 30 seconds based on the current percentage. And there was some guy that what approximately what we're talking about native speakers here. I mean, I'm getting off in a tirade territory, but man, the level of diction and vocabulary and inability to communicate in the younger generation is astonishing. I feel like a fossil sometimes. So why am I mentioning that? I mean, apart from my own personal lamentations as someone who is, a person interested in the humanities and the classics and the Western tradition, is the fact that if you have a core base, I mean, right, producers, developers, people who make products, they make products for people to buy, and they need to be appealing. So if you have, big words and like approximately and things like that, and that's not going to appeal. It's going to get dumber and dumber and dumber as time goes by because people simply can't. They don't. Their level of vocabulary is shrunken. They can't write. I know I've heard stories of Americans that can't write physical letters anymore on a page. All they can do is type. And so, yeah, you're not going to get people dialogue boxes and things like that. And it's a shame because it's a symbol of the attenuation of people's verbal capacity overall. And I mean, I'm sure the mathematical capacity isn't too far behind there in that regard. But it's just, and don't get me wrong, I played Far Cry Primal and it was fun. But it's, there's an appeal to that.
It's dumb fun.
It's dumb fun, and my worry is that dumb fun will be the thing to rule us all in the future, even though some of us are not participants in the fun stupidity of our time. So I'm incredibly worried about the future of the gaming industry. I mean, worried about other things too, but I'm worried very much about that just because I deal with these people, and it's shocking that I'll meet Europeans who are not native speakers of English who have a better grasp of English vocabulary, never mind grammar, than Americans do. It's shocking.
They seem to. One of the things I've noticed is that non-native speakers, like I know talking to like Alexander Migtow and stuff, he seems to. He has a much more classical way of speaking, I guess, because if you learn it as a second language, I guess you learn it the way it's supposed to be spoken.
I suppose, but it's more than that, Colttaine. It really is. I mean, the American education system is just crap, and I can see it. I meet people, born in the 21st century sometime online. I'm just thinking, I can't even have a conversation with them without intentionally dumbing down my speech, let alone communicate. I mean, approximately, what's the big? I guess I could have said it differently, but. It's just I was taken back, but this is the name of the game, and it's unfortunate these guys will come to dominate the market, and of course the people who make games will have to kowtow to them because they need to make money.
Yeah,
We
I
might
mean
need a
there
counter
are.
revolution. I think we need a counter revolution of people, and
Well,
it's starting. I mean, there are older people
yeah.
who are willing to invest time and energy and money into more classical genres.
Well, I think people. I think it's happening. I think people are becoming very, very wary of. I think people are pretty much fed up with pre-orders and early access. I think the general consensus is that
Yeah.
it's smoke and mirrors. I mean, I sort of briefly mentioned it before, but one of them, one of the worst examples of early access was the standalone version of DayZ.
Yeah.
As far as I know, that's basically just in development limbo now. Like it's vaporware. It's never going to be released, and people paid money for that. So I think people are becoming less and less, and there's other games as well. I mean, No Man's Sky, was it Star Citizen? I think it still hasn't come out yet. There's a lot of questionable stuff there, and people are starting to get really wary about giving money for a product they haven't got yet. I think people are starting to. The general consensus as well is that when things get shown at E3 and Gamescom, I think people are actually starting to employ the saying "fool me once, shame on you," "fool me twice, shame on me," where they've been burned too many times by games like like Aliens, Colonial Marines, and Watch Dogs, like just all of these games that had wonderful looking trailers. They've bought the pre-orders on the basis of that trailer, and then the product that they've got doesn't look like what they paid for.
Yeah.
So I think there is a bit of a backlash against that business model now. I don't know.
It might be Colttaine, but I think you're not. I mean, I agree with you to some degree, but you're not you're discounting this generation I'm talking about, the generation of verbal invalids. I mean, they're not the brightest hose in the garden, and they're not going to be the ones to question the system as you've posed. I agree with you that there are people, but they're not going to be the generation.
And that's true. I think the consoles do cater to the lowest common denominator. That said, I mean, it would be unfair to ignore, something like The Last of Us, which was I believe, PlayStation exclusive.
Yes,
which I think, it ended up being on most people's Game of the Year list.
Oh, yeah, I've heard stories about it. I can't say much about it, but I mean, yeah.
So I think, I mean, the consoles are the player base, the actual hardware inside the system. The consoles are always going to be the lowest common denominator. I guess it's just a matter of how low and whether or not, companies. I guess the market will the market will decide if people get fed up.
Sort it out. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's the other problem as well is that, I mean, hopefully, if CD Projekt does really well because of The Witcher 3. Other companies will try and adopt that model of quality.
I'm not sure. Final question here, though, in regards to this. I mean,
well,
if you have a choice, that's a valid point, Colttaine. But here's the problem: is that if you can still make more profit doing the Ubi shit, mode of things, then why would you do the CD Projekt Red when you're getting slightly less profit for working a lot harder?
Yeah, well, and I guess that's. Yeah, I mean, why would you do it? And if people are going to buy it, I guess this is one of the problems with the whole free market solves everything thing is that if almost the entire market is shit, then you don't really have a lot of options to choose from.
Yeah, and the other thing is, as I pointed out, is to put it colloquially, niggas is ignorant. So
yeah.
You're not gonna. They're gonna have to cater to people who are gonna buy their products, and it's just gonna be dumbed down. I just feel, obviously I'm a fossil to some degree, but damn, it's pretty depressing. Anyway, I think we covered all the bases more or less.
Yeah.
It's not a good direction. It seems like the whole world is not going in a good direction at the moment.
Possibly, but I mean, there is hope. I mean, I know. I
Hope.
mean,
There's hope.
I don't know the like extensive kind of full story behind it, but from what I understand of the basic overview, one of the major problems with Diablo 3 was the fact that they released this terrible marketplace system in the game. And there was basically another game that was developed by other people. I think it was, I don't know if it was indie, but a game called, what was it called? Path of Exile,
Right.
which is, my friends basically play that a lot, and they describe it to me as Diablo 3 with all of the problems fixed. So, but again, I'm pretty sure that's a PC exclusive.
It is.
So, there you go.
Man, and there, I mean, I've heard about Path of Exile, and I know people on my Steam list that are playing it. They play it all the time. So, yeah, I mean, you'll have some luck here and there, but I don't know. I'm deeply skeptical about the future of PC gaming. So, it's I guess we'll see what the future entails.
Yeah.
Well, I think we covered all the bases. And yeah, I hope this was at the very least informative and maybe a bit entertaining. Going a little bit off, veering off to a different area a different area of arena of topics than normally is explored here. But nonetheless, I realize a lot of people are gamers, including many people in my audience. So thanks for tuning in, and we will check you out later. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.